Doctors just treated a disease that used to be 100% fatal. Patients who were expected to need wheelchairs are still walking. And some are even able to work again after being medically retired. And that's just one of the good news we are covering today. Hey guys, I'm Freddy. And from 100 million fewer children living in extreme poverty to a new agreement signed by 112 countries that fights over fishing. Here are 10 good news stories that are actually making a difference. Our first story brings incredible news for children around the world. Today, nearly 100 million fewer children are living in extreme poverty compared to a decade ago. We are talking about children in households where each person lives on less than $3 a day. Not enough for proper meals, healthcare or school. In 2014, 507 million children were living at this level. That's roughly the entire population of North America. By 2024, that number dropped to 412 million, despite the pandemic causing a temporary spike and continued population growth worldwide. We are now at the lowest levels of extreme child poverty ever recorded. South Asia cut its child poverty rate dramatically, falling from around 25% in 2014 to just over 8% in 2024. India led the way, dropping its rate from over 25% to roughly 5% between 2011 and 2022. And East Asia saw similar gains over the same decade, with its extreme child poverty rate falling from nearly 13% in 2014 down to 4% in 2024. When talking about large numbers like these, keep in mind that every single one represents a real child that now has better access to food, healthcare and education. Of course, there's still a long way to go, but this progress over the past 10 years gives a lot of hope. Next up, we are heading to Scotland for news that could be a major relief for farmers, but still raises quite a few questions for others. Scientists have made progress on a problem that's been devastating pig farms for decades. Researchers at Edinburgh's Roslin Institute genetically modified pigs to make them completely immune to classical swine fever. It's a highly contagious viral disease that kills pigs within 15 days. When the Netherlands had an outbreak between 1997 and 1998, it affected 429 farms, cost $2.3 billion, and over 10 million pigs were slaughtered. In countries like China, Russia and Brazil, where it's still endemic, vaccination programs are the only defense. So, how did they solve it? Scientists edited a single gene called DNA JC14, essentially blocking the doorway the virus uses to infect cells. When they tested this, the gene-edited pigs stayed completely healthy, while the unedited pigs got sick within a week. And this approach is already moving beyond the lab. The same institute recently received regulatory approval, so this will be available to farmers next year. For farmers constantly battling outbreaks, this is great news. But what do you think about this? Are gene-edited animals really the way forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And now, we take a look at international good news. A long-awaited agreement to protect ocean life just became official. Here's the problem that's being tackled. Industrial fishing has already removed 90% of large fish from the ocean, like tuna, cod and swordfish. Right now, 38% of all fish stocks are overfished. And governments were making it worse by subsidizing fishing fleets, paying them to build more boats and covering fuel costs. After years of negotiations, the World Trade Organization's fisheries deal came into effect in September. This new agreement cuts $22 billion in harmful subsidies every single year. It targets illegal fishing and overfished stocks, making it financially less attractive to deplete endangered species. 112 countries signed on, including the United States, China and Japan. It's a binding framework, meaning countries actually have to follow these rules. And this sets the foundation for even stricter regulations in the future. And before we check out good news from California, quick thanks to CyberGhost VPN for supporting the channel. By now you've probably already heard me talk about VPNs. I've been using CyberGhost for over a year and honestly it just works. Whether I'm working on videos at home or while traveling, I just like knowing that my data isn't being tracked or sold. Simply open CyberGhost before browsing to encrypt and reroute all of your traffic through their secure servers, so no one can see your activity. What I really like is that you can use CyberGhost on up to 7 devices at the same time. So I've got it on my laptop and my phone, but you could even share it with family and friends. And it also lets me watch content that might normally be blocked where I live. CyberGhost has over 38 million users and a great rating on Trustpilot. Overall, it's just really simple to use. You can either pick from over 100 countries yourself or just let it choose the best location for you. Then you just hit this button and that's it. This way, you get 40% more content from your streaming platform and even better deals online. Right now, you get 84% off plus 4 whole months for free. And they have a 45-day money-back guarantee, so you can literally just try it risk-free and see if you like it or not. Check them out at cyberghostvpn.com/goodnews or use our link in the description. And now, let's move to California, where the state just hit a massive energy milestone. This November, California stopped getting electricity from coal, ending more than 100 years of coal use. Back in 2007, coal accounted for nearly 50% of the United States' electricity. By 2023, that dropped to just 16.2%. And California took it even further. They went from 2.2% in 2024 down to 0 this November, when the Intermountain Power Plant in Utah stopped supplying power. At the moment, natural gas is still the largest fuel source. But hydropower and solar have grown the most in recent years, making up for the decline of coal. Renewable energy is great, but storing it has always been tricky. A startup called Sizable Energy just raised $8 million to solve this exact problem using the ocean. Usually, storing energy in the form of water requires building pumps, dams and reservoirs on land. But this company found a way to do it in the ocean instead. Here's how it works. When there's extra renewable energy available, they pump dense sea salt brine down to a deep reservoir at the ocean floor. And when energy is needed, that brine can be released and flows back up to a floating reservoir at the surface. Basically, buoyancy does all the heavy lifting. This system can store gigawatt-scale power without taking up any land or building any dams. They've already tested it successfully in wave basins at the Maritime Research Institute Netherlands. Now, they are moving to real ocean trials off the coast of Italy. The company says their approach costs significantly less than battery storage, though specific numbers haven't been released yet. If these trials go well, they are planning to start commercial projects next year. For a renewable energy grid that badly needs better storage, the ocean may have just opened up as a massive battery. And speaking of new innovations, Norway just launched something that could change how we fight climate change. The world's first large-scale carbon storage facility is now fully operational. For decades, carbon capture has been talked about as a climate solution, but it's always been in small pilot projects. Northern Lights is the first built for commercial-scale operation, storing millions of tons annually. For now, they start at 1.5 million and will expand to over 5 million. For comparison, Norway's previous Sleipner project, which started back in 1996, stores about 1 million tons per year. And here's how it works. CO2 is captured from industrial sources like this cement plant in Brevik. The facility uses amines, a chemical process that separates CO2 from other gases. Once purified, it's cooled and compressed into liquid form, then loaded onto specialized ships. The ships deliver it to a coastal terminal in Øygarden. From there, it travels through a 100-kilometer pipeline before being injected 2,600 meters beneath the North Sea seabed. It's stored in what's known as the Aurora Reservoir, where layers of rock seal it permanently for thousands of years. In its first stage, the facility stores 1.5 million tons of CO2 annually, equivalent to removing 750,000 cars from the road. And that's net storage, even accounting for emissions from ships and operations. By 2028, capacity will exceed 5 million tons. And here's what sets it apart. It's an open service, meaning any European industry can ship its CO2 there for storage. Different companies from Denmark, the Netherlands and Sweden have already signed up. Companies pay to use it because it helps them meet climate targets and sell premium, low-carbon products. The Norwegian government is backing the project with $2.2 billion in subsidies, covering nearly 2/3 of the cost. At the moment, the facility is already fully booked, and demand keeps growing. This finally gives sectors like cement and steel a practical path towards lower emissions. Storing carbon underground is one solution, and restoring forests above ground is another. Scientists have just created a tool that finally shows us where planting trees is the most effective. For years, global reforestation maps have been heavily criticized. Previous estimates ranged widely, from 678 million to 2.5 billion hectares. The largest previous estimate came from the FLRO map, which identified 2.5 billion hectares, which is roughly 2.5 times the size of China. The problem? Many of these maps suggested planting trees in woodlands and savannas, ecosystems that would actually be damaged by dense tree cover. They also failed to consider local communities that depend on those lands for crops and grazing. And they overlooked fire-prone regions, where dense forests simply can't survive. Now, researchers have addressed every single critique. They used high-resolution satellite data from 2019 to 2020 and built in strict safeguards. The new maps exclude croplands, wetlands, vulnerable populations, and ecosystems where more trees would actually reduce biodiversity. After filtering out all those areas, they identified 195 million hectares, where reforestation truly makes sense. That's 71 to 92% smaller than previous estimates, but far more realistic. Reforesting this land could remove 2.2 billion tons of CO2 annually, about 5% of global emissions. This gives governments and organizations a clear roadmap to restore forests in places where it truly makes sense. Before we continue, if you're enjoying our videos, don't forget to subscribe for more good news. This really helps us keep making these videos, and we would truly appreciate it. And our next story takes us back to Europe, where a major milestone just happened beneath the Alps. After 18 years of construction, the Brenner base tunnel connecting Austria and Italy reached completion. A drill broke through the final meter of rock to connect both sides, 1,400 meters underground. At 55 kilometers long, it will become the world's second longest railway tunnel, and part of a massive EU project linking Helsinki to Palermo. When it opens in 2032, travel times will change dramatically. Munich to Verona drops from 5 hours to 2.5. And when you factor in airport security and waiting times, trains on these routes could actually be faster than flying. But here's the even bigger win. Over 2.5 million trucks currently cross the Brenner Pass annually. The tunnel will shift nearly half of the current truck traffic onto trains, which use far less energy and produce lower emissions. For Europe, this represents a major step towards more sustainable transport, while strengthening connections between European countries. Okay, let's check out the medical world. Researchers just achieved something extraordinary. For the first time ever, Huntington's disease has been successfully treated. This disease is genetic and combines symptoms of dementia, Parkinson's, and motor neuron disease. In the US alone, 41,000 people suffer from it. Symptoms appear in your 30s or 40s, and it's fatal within 2 decades. And until now, there was no way to stop it. But finally, there's a promising treatment method using gene therapy. So, how does it work? The disease is caused by a mutation that creates toxic proteins in brain cells. And that's exactly what doctors are targeting. During brain surgery, doctors guide a tiny tube into specific brain regions, using real-time MRI scans. They inject a modified virus carrying special DNA. The virus delivers that DNA inside brain cells. And once inside, the cells produce material that blocks the creation of those toxic proteins. That sounds crazy to me, but the results were stunning. The disease progression was slowed by 75%, giving patients decades more of good quality life. Patients expected to need wheelchairs are still walking, and one even returned to work after being medically retired. The treatment requires complex surgery and won't be widely available right away. But this is just the beginning. For families battling this disease, there's finally real hope. And for our last story, we get a bit more technical. Staying with medical innovation, researchers have just solved a problem that could transform how computers interact with our bodies. Engineers at the University of Massachusetts Amherst created the first artificial neurons that match real ones in every way. And here's why that matters. Your brain runs on just 20 watts of power to process enormous amounts of information. A computer doing the same task burns through over a megawatt. Scientists have tried building artificial neurons before, but they always used too much voltage. 10 times more than biological neurons and 100 times more power. That made them useless for connecting to living cells, which would be damaged by the high voltage. But the new artificial neurons operate at just 0.1 volts, exactly the same as real neurons in your body. The secret ingredient? Protein nanowires from electricity-generating bacteria. And yeah, I've never heard of this before this episode either. This opens the door to computers built on biological principles that are vastly more efficient. But more importantly, devices can now interface directly with living tissue without causing damage. Think medical sensors that don't need amplification, brain-computer interfaces that work seamlessly, or prosthetics that communicate naturally with your nervous system. And that's it for today's video. Which of these stories did you like the most? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you want to try CyberGhost VPN, use our link for 84% off plus 4 months for free. You can use CyberGhost on up to 7 devices at the same time and share it with friends and family. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye!